Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Don Robinson, and this is a short bulletin just to get you all warmed up and excited about Content Delivery World, which will be happening on the 27th and 28th of November this year in the Inmarsat building near Old Street in London. It's the third year we've been in that facility. It's a great facility for both its networking and presentation meeting rooms and so on, but also it's got a nice little exhibition space, and the food is good as well, which is always important. I am joined today by my friend and peer and wingman, I think we're going to use the term for the events. I have Jason Thibeault from the Streaming Video Alliance. How are you, JT?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Tom.
Excellent. And what have you been up to the last few weeks or so? Have you been trotting around doing SVA things, being busy as always?
Yes. So we actually just concluded our Q3, Q4 SVA member meeting in Budapest, Hungary. It was fantastic. It was our first 2-day meeting. We had about 70, 75 people there. Really great discussions, lots of working group stuff moving forward, lot of more documents coming out of the SVA, hopefully, maybe the end of this year and the beginning of next.
Excellent. And you've got various proofs of concepts on the way and stuff underway from some of the dev groups, haven't you? You mentioned at CDS.
That is correct as well, yeah. So we're looking at a proof of concept around best practices for improving delivery latency for 360-degree streamed video. We're also looking at a second POC for our open caching network and our open caching working group specifications. And then we do believe someone actually just did a proof of concept around MABR as well. So we've got some, testing that's being done by our member organizations, which is fantastic.
Excellent. We'll pick up more on that at the event itself and make sure we get the latest from you. So that would be good. Good. So this year, I think it's my 8th year chairing Content Delivery World, or certainly moderating or taking part in it. And it's always a good event for that slightly technically nitty-gritty element of looking at how we get content out. We do get a little bit video-centric, but we're not all about video. But this year we have got some kind of broad topics and some new topics that I felt would be interesting to bring to bear. So just have a quick whiz through through the sessions, and just feel free to interrupt if you've got any thoughts and comments about what's coming up, JT. But what we've got for the first quarter of the session is a look at clouds and how they're impacting and leveraging the content delivery world. Obviously, more and more people are using public cloud as a way to deliver content directly in some cases, and in other cases they're handing off from public cloud into CDNs and so on. So JT, you've got a panel mid-morning leveraging cloud for delivery. I don't know if you've got any plans for the discussion on that, but if you let us know something about that.
Yeah, I think we'll look at all aspects of the workflow. So I think that, a lot of people think of cloud and edge. So they think of just the immediate caching as close to the end user as possible because the clouds are distributed. But there's actually a lot of cloud usage for various other aspects of the workflow, origin storage, transcoding, DRM and security and protection. So there's a lot being done in the cloud and with cloud technology. So I think, going to cover that. We're going to allow that conversation to cover a lot of ground.
Excellent. And panelists confirmed on that. We got M2A Media already signed up to that one, and there's several more to join, I believe. So we'll update you on the agenda on the website as and when those are released. So do watch this space. Following through the morning, a little bit further on, we've got some sessions on quality and QoS and so on, and also we'll be looking at that hot topic of multi-CDN. There's obviously a lot being spoken about hybrid cloud and multi-CDN strategies. I think these have evolved with the companies like Sidexis and DataZoom and so on and so forth. So I think there's quite a meaty section of the day there looking at how to gather data in that space. It's something that you guys have been looking at a lot, both with your SVA hat on with that and with other hats on. That's right, JT?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of funny. I was, I'm going to take some credit here. I was like pioneering some of the messaging around multi-CDN, when I was with Limelight, maybe like 9-10 years ago. I mean, we were pushing for, hey, you should have more than one CDN. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's stupid. And it's funny to see how the industry has evolved towards that. And I would say that, probably 9 out of 10 of the major content providers or maybe 24 out of 25, they're all using multiple CDNs now. I mean, this is just like a foregone business conclusion. You have to use multiple delivery agents. And the question, the technology challenge, like that the SVA is looking at, and that companies like Sodexis are trying to solve, is really that how do you do it super effectively, right? So like in real time. That's companies like DataZoom, with capturing data very quickly about CDN performance can help. So that there's lots of things to talk about in this arena of how do I use multiple CDN for delivery, and sort of how do I configure that to work as best as possible.
Perfect. And then as we move into the afternoon sessions, we'll be looking more at virtualization technologies and how microservices and that sort of thing can be deployed. I've had some articles out in streaming media recently looking at OTT microservices, and those have been picking up a lot of interest. Obviously, some people have different approaches and call different things microservices, so we'll be exploring all of that in the sessions at Content Delivery World. You've got a panel called Running TV Services at the Edge in the afternoon, JT. Have you any thoughts to share at this stage about that?
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny that you just talked about microservices. The edge is actually the best place to run microservices. It's kind of built for microservices. I think as OTT operations scale globally, and with millions of concurrent subscribers, and you bake in interactivity and ad delivery and all sorts of other stuff and analytics, and you can't have a tightly coupled framework. You just can't, because if one piece fails, the whole platform fails. So having microservices, deployed as little bits of applications resident on the cloud as part of a bigger OTT platform framework is really the way that the industry needs to go, sort of functionally and architecturally. And I think that's some of the stuff we'll be talking about in that panel.
Perfect. And of course, we'll be looking a little bit more at how traditional broadcasters have been moving into the online content delivery world and so on and so forth. We've certainly got a session looking at how satellite and traditional telecoms are adapting to this world of IP streaming. And so on and so forth.
Well, and that's really interesting. I'd love to, sort of have a conversation, at Content Delivery World about this migration of broadcast to IP. This has been happening for 20, 25 years now. If you go to NAB, you go to IBC, the floor is littered with boxes and, new cables, new transponders, and new receivers that are all IP based. And that's really the transition that's happening, is broadcasting is moving to IP, because let's face it, sending your signal up to a satellite and back down to a downlink facility is stupidly expensive.
Yeah.
So if you can get, this content delivered around to your regional television stations or to other distribution places, even streaming via IP, it makes so much more economical sense. So I think that's a conversation that, is really interesting to have at a conference like this, and then see how it impacts the discussion of streaming. What are broadcasters doing as they start to leverage all this new IP infrastructure that, mind you, some of their engineers have been fighting for decades. How do you leverage it to stream to your out of franchise users and your users that are, not subscribers to your traditional broadband? So it's really a really interesting sort of transition that we're in right now, which garners a lot of conversation.
And I think both parties have a lot to bring to each other if they can collaborate well. I think that's the important
totally
thing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then towards the end of the afternoon, I've introduced a new session which is going to be looking at policy and the impacts of various changes in different countries' policy attitudes and so on. It's been something that it was a personal interest of mine many years ago when my own CDN joined the Internet Service Providers Association, and I became good friends with the guy who'd founded the ISPA group and the Euro ISPA group. So I've asked Nick Landsman to come in and moderate that panel.
Very cool.
He's reciprocated by asking me to sit on the panel, which is a little bit scary. But we've got some very interesting people there. There's people who've been running some of the very well-known multimedia groups within the largest legal practices, so representing key studios, key music studios, and key film studios. We've also got people who've worked deep within ISP policy units and so on. And a lot of CDNs don't realise that actually they actually are ISPs of a niche kind, and they can be subject to things deriving from issues such as child pornography takedown notices, piracy notices, and so on and so forth. And quite often, I think the CDNs, because they don't face the retail community and they're relatively unknown outside of the technical community, I think they think that a lot of these issues don't have any bearing on them whatsoever. And so we're going to be discussing whether they do or not, and whether there are whether the CDNs can claim mere conduit, or whether they actually are culpable in some way if they cache, for example, illegal content and continue to make that available for distribution. So it's an area which there's certainly no case history that I'm aware of in the CDN space that specifically deals with CDNs, but there are in many of the CDN's partners, such as the telcos and the ISPs. And I think as the CDNs are becoming a more well-known and larger aggregator of the wealth, if you like, in the value of content distribution, they'll increasingly become targets for people who are pursuing policy agendas and so on. So we've got an interesting panel that are going to be breaking some new ground with that one. So I'm personally looking forward to that one, although I wasn't expecting to be thrown in the fire myself and put in that one. And just to wind up day one, we're going to be looking at DRM and protection strategies and so on, because obviously those things are important. What are you guys doing on the DRM front in the SVA, JT?
So we're not doing anything specifically with DRM. We just did publish a paper on sort of implementation challenges for forensic watermarking in digital media. The thing is that we see stream security as really a layered approach. So there are multiple technologies to use. You should probably employ DRM. You should probably employ tokenization. You should probably employ watermarking. You can't just choose one thing and then kind of hope for the best. That's not a sound strategy. So we're actually getting ready to start working on a document that looks at a holistic approach to stream security and sort of best practices. What should you be doing to protect your streams? And we're really not talking about VOD assets. I think you put DRM on VOD, you're done. You watermark VOD, you're done. But when you talk about streaming, and especially near real time or real time or live linear, you've got more issues to contend with from a security perspective now. And so this new white paper that our privacy and protection working group is going to start generating is really going to try to address some of the best practices around how to protect streaming media.
Excellent. Any mention of blockchain in the community?
Blockchain. So I tell people, listen, blockchain is really cool. It's really interesting. The problem is it's very fat, right? So for example, if you want to download the Bitcoin blockchain, I think it's like 420 gig. It's not tenable. Blockchain also doesn't really, depending upon how many nodes and how many authorized assignees are attached to the blockchain, it can really slow down transactions. So, you'll notice that none of the financial industries have taken to it. So stock trading is not done with blockchain. Things that require very, very, very low latency, almost near real-time transactions can't use it. And so if you're talking about employing blockchain for like video security, so, replacing DRM, or you're talking about it for like ad impression, I mean, you might have tens of millions of transactions happening a minute because there are that many people watching a video. And it's just, blockchain is not at the moment a tenable solution. Might it be in the future? Sure, we're going to keep our eyes open. We're going to have lots of use cases and lots of discussions about it. But right now, it's so bleeding edge. We're just not there yet. We need to keep exploring and experimenting.
We've been having some discussions about whether it's possible to put the entire video into the blockchain and just jam up the whole system. But anyway, we can wind we can wind some people up on the day. I think we do, as JT and I are known to do, we do like putting a few contentious statements out there to get the conversations going. So day two, we're going to be moving on to the topic du jour for 2018, which is CDNs and latency. We got pretty much half the day focused on that. It is an important movement this year in the CDN space. So we'll be looking at the latest developments. Obviously, we've had Limelight launching some great services. We've also had Akamai and the BBC announce their CMAF focused low latency strategies just in the last couple of days. So I think that's going to be a hot topic with no end of discussion and so on. We've given plenty of space for that in the morning.
Here's the funny thing. Didn't we already solve this problem?
RTMP?
Wasn't it called RTMP?
Well,
What
yes.
is old is new again.
And I think we also solved the scaling problem with multicast, but everyone forgot to deploy it and started charging for
It's
expensive
kind of
bandwidth.
funny with everybody focused on low latency. And again, latency is important. The problem is, especially from like the SVA perspective, we don't call it latency. We call that time behind live,
Okay.
because there are, latency is a network measurement,
Hmm.
and the viewer experience doesn't necessarily take into account network measurements, right?
Yeah.
So the user may have issues with their player or their local connection or their Wi-Fi or their DSLAM or their bandwidth that have nothing really to do with the network related delivery aspects of the workflow. So it's interesting to have that conversation. We need to sort of define what latency is first,
Yeah.
figure out what we're all really talking about. And if it's time behind live, totally agree. Problem that needs to be solved.
Oh, there's a good old description of a detailed description of latency, which goes into some detail about propagation delay in a book by some unknown author. I have no idea who he is.
Good plug.
Got to plug it where you can. So yes, we got some great great time and sessions on latency in the morning for the conference there, and then we're going to be looking at we're going to take a segue into how smaller CDNs can maintain value and so on. You've got a panel on that session. I'm actually personally quite looking forward to that because it's how the small CDNs innovate. Those CDNs that might be entirely built on public cloud infrastructure and so on, but they do something different and so on. So
Right.
I'm quite looking forward to that session. Got any ideas of any tricky questions you'll be putting to the panelists at this stage, JT?
I'm going to be contentious in this panel, because obviously, I have a pretty probably firm belief that the CDN market's too big as it stands right now. There's just too many players.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of players that are coming up just to build CDN services on top of existing infrastructure, like cloud infrastructure, so using Amazon. Now, there are companies out there, like we had a company as part of our 2018 grant program in the streaming video alliance called Phoenix RTS, which is kind of a CDN solution, sort of real-time streaming. They're doing some super innovative stuff. And, I don't know what their plans are long-term, if they're thinking about expanding infrastructure and running as a CDN, or maybe, deploying their software in other CDNs. But there are players out there really innovating in how content gets delivered via, whether it's TCP or UDP, but definitely, over IP. And so that's really, really interesting. And we need those innovators, but the market for CDN is just way too big. There's just too many of them out there. Content delivery is controlled probably by 6 CDNs, and everybody else gobbles up the remaining 2% of the market. So, we're going to have an interesting conversation in that panel. I'm going to challenge some of the panel participants.
Yeah, there's a panelist I'm going to try and bring in. He's specialised on radio CDN. We haven't got that plugged in yet, so I can't guarantee that that's going to happen. But there are niches where I think focused value-added services can really make a difference and so on.
Sure.
But also, I am very tired of just hearing that anyone for the last decade or so, anyone who's doing any innovation in the CDN space, when you strip it back, they seem to be doing another P2P play. So I'm going to put the P2P people on the spot. So
P2P is getting popular again.
It is in brand, but I'm not sure if popularity is necessarily the word I use. Anyway, we'll also be looking at AI and business intelligence. Now, interestingly, I think this might fold back into the multi-CDN discussions, because I think certainly the business intelligence side of
Yes.
Of the discussion is critical to evaluating which CDN you're going to switch to at what point in time and so on. So I think
the key thing is prediction, right? So that's where AI comes in, right? You want an edge-based service that can predict where outages might occur. And if they might occur, you switch CDNs prior to them occurring. So I think that's the sort of end goal. We're not there yet. We're nowhere near there yet. We don't have, the algorithms. We don't have the automation set up. We don't have the real-time data set up. I mean, that was one of the reasons, that I co-founded DataZoom, was to get data into systems like that faster, so that companies could make business decisions in real time around the video experience, which could include, shifting to a different CDN. So I think AI is, like Gartner hype cycle, like blockchain is super hypey. AI is definitely further along in the curve, and there are really defined use cases, I think, for the application of AI to content delivery. So I think we just need to find what those are and figure out how to implement them, in the next 2 to 3 years. But there's a lot of really good discussion we can have around applying, machine learning and AI to the content delivery workflow.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, I mean, I've been penning some of my normal word pedant definitions of articles about the misuse and the overhype of the term AI. I think people, certainly the consumer market, is led to believe that a lot of machine learning, a lot of business intelligence processes are somehow powered by some great IBM brain that's in, or Google brain that has actually got real general AI. And we are decades away from a general AI. And I think the term is suffering from being misused. Having done AI at university, I think I'm the only person in the industry who's actually got an some degree of an AI qualification, and
That might very well be true.
I'm not seeing a great deal of real innovation in the AI space. I am seeing a lot of innovation around machine learning.
Oh yeah.
And narrow forms of AI, but I think we need to. I think there's some good discussion to be had there. Cool, and then we got a session towards the end of the afternoon. We're expected to be focusing a little bit on digital ad insertion, SSSI, too many S's there, server-side ad integration, and I should imagine the hot topic of SCTE 35 might rear its head into that space as well, because that seems to be the practical hard end of those two. So, got anything going on SCTE 35 in the SVA?
No, I mean, obviously, SCTE does a great job of, figuring out what needed to happen at the broadcast level to do things like ad insertion. There's been some work, like I know Hulu's done a lot of work in sort of translating SCTE 35 to a streaming, but the problem is that it's the data, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is capturing, basically ad insertion, cue point data in lots of different ways. So some people will give it SCTE 35 compliant, some people give it in spreadsheets, some people give it in text files. So there's, I think there's need for kind of best practices about how to implement some of these broadcast-based standards in streaming. And that's where the SVA will probably step in. And, we haven't looked yet at SCTE 35, but we do have a live streaming working group now. Mm-hmm. So that may be one of the things that we look at in the future.
Excellent, cool. And then just to wrap the day up, a new slot that I think will make a lot of sense with JT and I sort of playing this chair and wingman game around each other at these two events. We've got a wind down session at the end where the two of us will just reflect on the various discussions we've had over the past few days, see if we've actually found any answers to the contentious questions we've put, or whether we've just opened wounds and are going to get mugged on the way home. So with that, JT, thanks for spending 20 minutes with me now, just helping everyone get a bit of a preview for the conference and hopefully getting everyone a little bit more in the know about what's going on. Just to remind you all, it's on the 27th and 28th of November. In the Inmarsat building in London, and Content Delivery World. The website itself is tmt.connect365.com/content-delivery-world. So that is obviously much easier to Google. So just Google Content Delivery World. And with that, JT, thanks very much for joining me.
No, cool. Thank you, Dom. I'm really looking forward to the event, man. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. And enjoy the next few weeks. I will see you over at Streaming Media West before then, and shortly after that, I'll see you back in London.
Yes, you will.
Cool. Once again, thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, man.